Here's your Aunt May again. This picture was taken when she was 14 and I was 8.
For years, the Carol Burnett Show looked like one of the happiest places on television. But behind the scenes, there was one week when everything nearly fell apart. Decades later, Carol Burnett finally revealed the moment when she was pushed to a breaking point with one of the show's biggest stars, Harvey Korman. Join us as we uncover the real story behind why Carol Burnett nearly fired Harvey Korman. The Carol Burnett Show. When The Carol Burnett Show first premiered on CBS in 1967, it quickly stood out from other television programs. At a time when many comedy shows followed a predictable format, this series mixed several styles into one fast-moving variety show. Each episode blended sketch comedy, musical numbers, and moments of direct interaction with the studio audience. Carol Burnett often began the show by speaking with viewers in the crowd, answering questions, and setting a relaxed tone before the sketches even started. This personal touch helped the audience feel connected to the show in a way that few programs managed at the time. Burnett herself was at the center of everything. She was not just the host introducing segments. She performed in many of the sketches, sang in musical numbers, and guided the pace of the entire program. One moment she could play a dramatic character in a parody of a famous movie, and the next she could switch to a completely silly role in a fast-paced comedy sketch. Her ability to move easily between different styles of performance helped define the personality of the show. But the show was never meant to be a one-person spotlight. From the beginning, it relied heavily on a strong ensemble cast. Harvey Korman played a key role as the show's versatile straight man. While Burnett and others often pushed the comedy into outrageous territory, Korman provided structure and timing that kept the sketches grounded. His ability to react seriously in absurd situations made many of the jokes land even harder. Vicki Lawrence joined the show as a young performer who quickly became a fan favorite. Over time, she developed memorable characters and proved she could match the comedic timing of the more experienced cast members. Lyle Waggoner also played an important part in the early years of the show. With his steady presence and reliable performances, he helped round out the ensemble and became a familiar face to viewers every week. The success of the show depended heavily on chemistry. Sketch comedy moves quickly, and performers must respond to each other's timing with precision. Many sketches allowed room for small moments of improvisation, which meant the cast had to trust each other completely. They needed to know how their fellow performers would react, sometimes with only a split second to respond. Despite the relaxed and playful feeling that viewers saw on television, the work behind the scenes was very structured. Rehearsals were carefully scheduled, and every segment was timed closely. The cast and crew worked hard to make sure each episode flowed smoothly from one sketch to the next. Carol Burnett played an important role in maintaining that balance. As the star of the show, her name was on the title, but she also took responsibility for keeping the atmosphere positive and professional. She understood that guest stars needed to feel comfortable when stepping into the fast-moving environment of the show. Making sure everyone felt respected and welcome was part of her leadership. And as the show continued to grow in popularity, that leadership would soon be tested in a way no one on the set expected: the changing dynamic of the cast. As the Carol Burnett Show moved through the early 1970s, the cast that viewers had grown used to began to change. One of the biggest shifts came in 1974 when Lyle Waggoner left the program. Waggoner had been part of the show since the early seasons and was known for his steady presence in many sketches. He often played the handsome leading man or the straight character in humorous situations. His departure meant the cast had to adjust. When a longtime performer leaves a show built around ensemble timing, it changes how scenes are written and how actors interact with each other. At the same time, another performer was becoming more important to the show's future. Tim Conway had already appeared several times as a guest. Audiences loved his style of comedy, which often included unexpected jokes and physical humor that caught even his fellow cast members off guard. Conway had a reputation for being very quick and spontaneous. Sometimes, his improvisations caused other performers to break character and laugh during the sketch. These moments became some of the most memorable parts of the show. Because of his popularity, Conway started appearing more frequently in sketches. His growing role helped fill the space left after Wagoner's departure. Over time, Conway's presence brought a slightly different energy to the cast. His unpredictable humor added another layer to the show's comedy, and the rest of the performers had to stay sharp to keep up with him. Behind the scenes, the cast spent a great deal of time together. Rehearsal days were long, and the schedule was demanding. Writers worked closely with the performers to shape sketches, while the actors practiced scenes again and again before taping. Even though the work was serious, humor helped everyone stay relaxed. Many cast members later described the atmosphere as friendly and supportive. They joked with each other constantly, and that shared humor helped them handle the pressure of producing a new episode every week. When everything went wrong. The week the trouble started did not look unusual at first. In fact, it looked like the kind of week that should have gone smoothly. The Carol Burnett Show was used to working with big-name guests, and this lineup seemed especially manageable. Tim Conway was involved during a period when he was becoming more and more important to the show, even though he was not yet fully locked in as a regular cast member. By that point, everyone already knew how funny he was and how easily he connected with both the audience and the rest of the performers. Petula Clark was also booked that week, bringing her own star power and professionalism. She was well-known, experienced, and not the kind of guest anyone expected to create problems. On paper, it should have been a strong and easy week. But according to Carol Burnett's later retelling, something felt wrong almost right away during rehearsals. Harvey Korman, who was usually one of the show's most dependable performers, seemed to be in a noticeably bad mood. Burnette remembered sensing that his whole attitude had changed. This was not just quiet frustration or a small moment of irritation. It was visible. It affected how he spoke to people and how he carried himself around the set. On a show where timing, trust, and mood mattered so much, even one person bringing tension into the room could be felt by everyone else. One detail from Burnette's memory made the situation stand out even more. She recalled that Korman was rehearsing in an Elvis-style costume that day. Under normal conditions, that would have been funny all by itself. It fit perfectly with the kind of broad comedy and celebrity parody the show was known for. But instead of adding to the fun, the costume only made the tension feel stranger. Here was a performer dressed in a playful outfit meant to entertain people. Yet he was moving through rehearsal with anger and sharpness. The contrast between how he looked and how he was acting made the whole scene feel even more uncomfortable. As rehearsal continued, the tension became harder to ignore. Burnette later said that Korman was scowling at people and acting rude. Reports from that day suggested he snapped at others and created an atmosphere that made the room feel uneasy. What especially upset Burnette was his behavior toward Tim Conway and Petula Clark. Conway was someone the show valued deeply, and Clark was a guest who had come in expecting a professional and welcoming environment. Burnette believed strongly that guests had to be treated with care and respect. They were stepping into a format that depended on trust, and if they felt uncomfortable, the sketches could fall apart before they even reached the cameras. The crew began to feel it too. On a variety show, the people behind the scenes need the set to run smoothly. When the mood turns sour, it can slow everything down. What should have been an ordinary rehearsal week was quickly becoming something much more serious. And before long, Carol Burnett decided she could not just stand back and let it continue. Why Burnett saw the situation as serious. To someone watching from home, a comedy variety show can look effortless. The sketches are funny, the performers seem relaxed, and the laughter feels natural. But behind the scenes, the environment is much more delicate than it appears. Variety shows depend heavily on atmosphere. Rehearsal rooms are places where performers test jokes, try different lines, and sometimes make mistakes while working out a scene. For that process to work, everyone needs to feel comfortable and supported. When tension enters the room, it can spread quickly and make it harder for people to focus on the comedy. Carol Burnett understood this better than most people because she was responsible for guiding the entire production. Her name was on the show, and that meant she felt personally responsible for the environment on set. If something disrupted the mood of the rehearsal, it was not just a small personal issue. It could affect the timing of sketches, the confidence of the performers, and even the final quality of the episode. When she noticed Harvey Korman's behavior that week, she knew it was more than someone simply having a rough morning. One reason the situation felt so serious was the presence of guest stars. Every week, celebrities joined the show and stepped into sketches that were often unfamiliar to them. Many of these guests were used to acting in movies, singing on stage, or appearing in interviews. Sketch comedy was different. It required quick reactions, precise timing, and the ability to adapt if something unexpected happened during a scene. Because of this, guest stars depended on the regular cast to guide them through the process. They needed to trust that the people around them were supportive and professional. And by the time Burnette had watched the tension grow throughout rehearsal, she realized the situation had reached that point, and it was time for her to step in. The dressing room. By the time Carol Burnett decided to speak to Harvey Korman directly, the problem had already gone beyond a small backstage annoyance. She had seen the tension during rehearsal, noticed the way he was behaving, and understood that the mood on set was beginning to change. Still, that did not mean she enjoyed what she had to do next. Burnette later made it clear that confrontation did not come naturally to her. She was not someone who liked dramatic arguments or harsh personal exchanges. Her public image was warm, funny, and approachable, and that reflected a real part of who she was. Even as the leader of the show, she did not go looking for conflict. When Burnette entered Korman's dressing room, her approach was serious, but not hostile. She wanted to know what was wrong. From her point of view, this was a reasonable question. If one of her main performers was clearly upset and was creating tension around the studio, then it mattered. She was not only asking as a fellow cast member, she was asking as the person trying to keep the production running smoothly. Her concern was both personal and professional. Korman did not respond in a way that opened the door to a calm conversation. Instead, he immediately became defensive. Rather than explain what was bothering him, he shut the discussion down. Burnette said he told her to mind her own business. That response mattered because it showed that he did not see the issue the way she did. To him, his mood may have felt private. To Burnette, it had already become public because it was affecting how he treated people at work. And in the next few moments, that argument would turn from tense to explosive. The moment the argument turned explosive. During the exchange, Korman's frustration became more direct. According to Burnette's later account, he told her that if things were such a problem, he might as well just go home and not come back after the show that night. It was a dramatic statement, and it showed how heated the conversation had become. What had started as a discussion about behavior during rehearsal was now turning into a threat that he might walk away from the program entirely. For Burnette, hearing that kind of comment from one of the show's main performers was serious. The program depended heavily on its cast working together smoothly. Losing someone like Korman suddenly would have been a major disruption. But at that moment, the conversation had already moved past a calm discussion of solutions. Both of them were standing their ground. As the argument continued, the situation physically shifted from the dressing room into the hallway. Burnette later described how Korman moved her backward out of the room during the exchange. Instead of the conversation staying private inside the dressing room, it was now happening in a more public area where other people could potentially see the tension. The moment had turned from a disagreement into something more uncomfortable and visible. Then came the moment that Burnette remembered most clearly. Korman closed the dressing room door on her. In practical terms, it ended the conversation immediately, but symbolically, it also carried a stronger meaning. Closing the door in the middle of an argument can feel like shutting someone out completely. In a workplace setting, especially one where teamwork is essential, it can signal a breakdown in communication. At that moment, Burnette realized she could not simply hope the problem would disappear on its own. A decision had to be made, and it had to be made quickly. The phone call. After Harvey Korman shut the dressing room door on Carol Burnett, she made a decision almost immediately. There was no long pause, no waiting to see whether the tension would calm down on its own, and no effort to pretend that nothing serious had happened. Burnette later said that the moment had shaken her deeply. From her point of view, the situation had crossed a line, and she felt she had to respond in a way that made clear just how serious it was. So she picked up the phone and called Korman's agent. That call was not a small gesture made in the heat of the moment. It was a direct professional move. Burnette informed the agent that Harvey Korman would be finished with the Carol Burnett Show after that evening's performance. In other words, she was prepared to end his time on the series right then and there. For a cast member as important as Korman, this was a major decision. He was not a minor player or an occasional guest. He had been one of the show's central performers for years, and his work was a big part of its comedy. Burnette's decision may sound sudden, but in her mind, it was necessary. She was not only reacting to her personal argument with Korman, she was thinking about the set as a whole. By that point, his mood had already affected rehearsals, made guest stars uncomfortable, and created tension for the crew. Burnette believed strongly that the workplace had to remain respectful and stable, especially on a fast-moving variety show where so many people depended on each other. If she allowed the situation to continue without consequences, it could send the message that this kind of behavior would be tolerated. The final conversation. After the show ended that night, Carol Burnett made a choice that says a lot about how she handled conflict. She did not leave the situation hanging, and she did not send someone else to deal with it for her. Instead, she went back to Harvey Korman's dressing room herself. This time, the mood was different. The earlier argument had been sharp, emotional, and heated. Now the moment called for something more controlled. Burnette returned not to continue shouting, but to make clear what had already happened and what it meant. By then, she had already taken the most serious step possible. She had called Korman's agent and said he would be done with the Carol Burnett Show after that evening's performance. So when she entered the room again, the conversation was calm in tone, but very serious in substance. There was no confusion about why she was there. She had come to tell him directly that she had acted on what had happened between them. That mattered because it showed she was not making empty threats in the heat of an argument. She had followed through. Burnette told Korman that she had already contacted his agent. That statement changed everything. Earlier in the day, the argument had been about his behavior and his refusal to listen. Now it was about consequences. The tension was no longer theoretical. His place on the show was suddenly in real danger. For someone who had been one of the core performers on the series, that had to be a shocking thing to hear. Korman was not just another employee passing through. He had been a major part of the show's success, and now he was being told that his future there could end because of what had happened backstage. What happened next is what makes this story so memorable. Instead of reacting with more anger, Korman responded in a way Burnette did not seem to expect. He asked what he could do to make it right. That question changed the direction of the conversation at once. Until then, the story had been moving toward a clean break. But with that one response, the moment opened up into something else. It became less about punishment and more about whether repair was possible. Then came the condition that made the whole moment unforgettable. Burnette told Korman that when he came back the next week, she expected him to be cheerful all week long, not for a few minutes. Not only when people were watching, she wanted a visible change in attitude. And she gave him a very specific image, to remember. She said she wanted to see him skipping around and whistling in the hallway. Korman agreed to the terms. He accepted the conditions, and the two of them sealed the understanding with a handshake. It was a simple gesture, but it carried real weight. The decision had been made. He could come back, but only if he truly changed his behavior. Korman's apology. Korman later made an effort to take responsibility for the people around him. That part matters because the problem had never been limited to a private argument between two stars. His mood and behavior had affected the wider working environment, and the crew had felt it too. If things were truly going to return to normal, it was not enough for Burnette alone to accept his change in attitude. The people behind the scenes also needed to see that he understood what had gone wrong. Reports later suggested that crew members heard Korman's own version of the incident. This was important because it showed he was not trying to hide from what happened or pretend it had been exaggerated. Instead, he appears to have accepted that Burnette had every right to confront him and set clear boundaries. In a television production, crew members notice more than viewers ever see. They watch the pace of rehearsals, the mood of the cast, and the way people treat each other under pressure. So, when something disrupts the atmosphere, they know it immediately. Korman's willingness to address the situation openly helped show that he understood the seriousness of it. One of the most memorable parts of the story is what Burnette later said she heard happened at a local bar where members of the crew often gathered after work. According to her, Korman climbed up on the bar and retold the whole story himself. That image is striking because it sounds theatrical, which fits both the world they worked in and Korman's own personality. But beneath the humor was something more meaningful. By retelling the story publicly, he was admitting that Burnette had put him in his place and that she had been right to do it. Burnette also said that Korman toasted her. That small detail carried real weight. A toast is a public gesture of acknowledgement, and in this case, it seems to have been his way of recognizing her leadership in front of others. He was not only accepting her authority in private, he was doing it openly, in a setting where the crew could hear and understand the message. What made this apology especially effective was that it stayed true to the language of the show, comedy. Instead of offering a stiff, formal speech, Korman used humor to repair the damage. That likely made it easier for people to move forward without forcing everyone into an awkward emotional scene. By turning the incident into a funny story while still accepting responsibility, he helped restore the sense of ease that had been missing. And before long, Burnette would make sure the lesson stayed visible every single day on set. What Harvey Korman said about the incident. In later interviews, Harvey Korman did not dismiss the confrontation with Carol Burnett or act as though it had been exaggerated. Instead, he reflected on it in a way that showed he understood how serious the moment had been. One of the things that stood out most in his retelling was Burnette's anger. People who worked with her and audiences who watched her knew her as warm, funny, and generous. She was not known for explosive behavior or harsh treatment. That is exactly why the incident stayed with him. Seeing Carol Burnett truly angry was unusual, and because it was unusual, it had real force. For Korman, that was part of what made the experience so shocking. If someone who is normally loud and confrontational gets angry, people may not think much of it. But Burnette was different. She had built a reputation for kindness and steadiness. So when she finally reached her limit, Korman understood that the situation had gone much further than an ordinary backstage disagreement. Her anger told him that this was not about a passing irritation. It was about behavior that had disrupted the atmosphere of the show and affected the people around him. Korman also seemed to understand the core message Burnette was giving him. In simple terms, it was this: if he were unhappy being there, he did not have to stay. But if he wanted to remain part of the Carol Burnett Show, then he had to come in with a better attitude and treat people properly. That message was firm, but it was also fair. Burnette was not demanding perfection. She was demanding professionalism. What comes through in Korman's comments is a real respect for Burnette's authority. He understood that she had every right to enforce standards on a show that carried her name and depended on a strong working environment. He may not have liked the confrontation in the moment, but later he seemed to accept that she had done exactly what a leader was supposed to do. And as Burnette later explained, the deepest reason for her reaction had very little to do with herself at all. Burnette's revelation. When Carol Burnett spoke about the incident years later, she made an important point. The real issue was not that Harvey Korman had been short with her personally. She was clear that she could handle that. In a long television career, she had dealt with difficult moments and strong personalities before. What truly upset her was not a private insult or a bruised ego. It was what his behavior meant for everyone else working around them. For Burnette, The line was crossed when a guest star was treated badly. That mattered deeply to her because guest performers were stepping into a show that already had its own rhythm, inside jokes, and fast-moving style. They were entering an environment where they had to trust the regular cast in order to do well. If a guest felt uncomfortable, unwelcome, or nervous because of tension on set, the whole experience could fall apart. Burnette believed that the cast had a responsibility to help guests feel safe enough to join in and be funny. That connects directly to how she saw the tone of the show. The Carol Burnett Show may have looked loose and playful on screen, but behind the scenes, it depended on cooperation. Sketch comedy only works when people listen to each other, support each other, and stay open in the moment. Burnette understood that one person's bad behavior could change the mood of the room and damage the teamwork that made the show successful. In her eyes, protecting that atmosphere was part of her job. That is also why she chose to tell the story decades later. She was not sharing it just to revisit an old backstage fight. She was explaining a leadership decision. The story revealed how seriously she took her role, not just as the star of the show, but as the person responsible for the environment in which everyone worked. It showed that even in comedy, standards mattered, and with the conflict finally behind them, the show moved forward. But the lesson from that week never really disappeared. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and join us for more fascinating behind-the-scenes stories from classic television and Hollywood history.